was truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live, Sunday, May 3rd, 2020, right here in the United Corporations of America. I hope everyone is having an okay weekend. I hope everyone is having a safe weekend. I am, I guess, on the mend, you could say, from coronavirus. My cough is getting a little bit better, and hopefully, I'm going to try and get retested in the next week to see if I still have it in my system, because I know my girlfriend and I would both love to be able to get out of New York and, visit her parents at some point, visit my parents at some point. So that would mean I have to be retested and make sure I'm not carrying the virus. As well as make sure she's not, because obviously there's, I believe, a quarter to 30% of people with coronavirus are asymptomatic. So fortunately, she has not had any symptoms, even though I was carrying it, but that doesn't mean she's not carrying it. So hope you're in for a great show. We have an interview with a leader from Navajo Nation. I've been trying to get somebody from Navajo Nation for a while because, of course, when these kinds of things happen, our indigenous communities are always forgotten, and often they are the hardest hit. Many people don't know that Navajo Nation, which parts of the reservation are in Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico, is their territory is as large as states like West Virginia. So it's essentially, when you comprise their territory, it's as big as some United States. And they are being very, very ravaged by the coronavirus. So we will have an interview with a council member from Navajo Nation. They don't have great internet service there, so the interview doesn't look so great, but the audio is good. So that's all that matters. I want to remind people, you could help get this live stream out to the masses. YouTube is not going to notify all of our subscribers. We're at almost 79,000 subscribers. YouTube's probably not going to notify 80% of them that we're live right now. So what you could do for us, we got 200 people watching. 100 of you have pressed that like button. It's a thumbs up button right under the live stream. The more people that smash the thumbs up button, fake it till you make it. Even if you're not feeling in a liking mood, just please, every single person watching, press that thumbs up button. The more people that press the thumbs up button, the more people that will see this very live stream. Yes, I do see those comments about the flag. Jen and I we might have to reach out to this company and make a deal, because I think we're giving them some business here. There's a lot of people buying this flag now because they see it behind me. Some business, all business, maybe. So smash that like button right under the live stream. We're also live on the Twitter right now at Status Coup. Jen, I forgot to do it. If you could retweet our Periscope from my Twitter, that would be great. Also, Jordan, also unblock adblock helps. I don't know what that means, but I'll consider it. Also, we're live on Twitch right now, so definitely follow us on Twitch. That's another platform we're trying to grow. We are at twitch.tv/Status Coup. YouTube, we don't know. We don't know if we're long for the YouTube world. Hopefully we are, but the throttling and the suppression is really, really bad. Join our email list, statuscoup.com. Enter your email there. Makes a big difference. And I don't know, maybe miracles exist. We are currently, what is this? Hold on. Why is it showing this when I need it to show? Hold on. We're currently, let me do the math, 1,720, is that 1,720? Yeah, $1,720 away from reaching $100,000 raised on our GoFundMe. So obviously, we're not going to push you too hard, being that so many people are losing their jobs and struggling or scared economically right now. So if you don't have anything to contribute, we totally understand. If you do, I think GoFundMe's minimum is $5. Please support us if you can, because we are being hit hard by coronavirus. The lack of ability to go out in the field and report, which we normally do. And obviously members canceling is definitely affecting us. I actually need to update that. We're now down to 1,840. So we're losing members. And they are canceling and sending us messages that they still love us, but they're losing their jobs or whatever. So hopefully, if you got a couple bucks, Jen will put the GoFundMe link in the super chat, and it is a super chat too. So you pick whatever you want. You could leave a super chat or a GoFundMe. Ginagal9, $5, getting us started in the super chat. Thank goodness you are covering Indigenous people. They are so overlooked and have suffered greatly. Yeah, and you know what? Jen and I have spoken about it before, but when the coast is clear, and obviously I want Navajo Nation's permission, I don't want to just show up as a white dude without Native say-so. I'd love to go to Navajo Nation. One of my dreams is doing an across-the-country tour of reservations and interviewing people on, not just the environmental threats, but the poverty, problems with alcohol, Indigenous women going missing, and the rampant kidnappings of Indigenous women. A lot of stories to cover on Indigenous issues, as we saw, based on the real interest in Standing Rock a couple years ago. So let's get right to it. Again, we got almost 300 people watching, so make sure you press that thumbs up button. I'm not really in a mood to play around today, okay? I'm naming names because, and I'm going to say some things you might not like. Some people might be triggered, so a trigger warning. I got to tell you the truth. This whole Tara Reade situation, as it unfolds, it's no longer, to tell you the truth, it's really no longer about whether Joe Biden assaulted her or not. That's been made clear by the Democratic Party and their allies. I'll be very honest, I have no idea if Joe Biden assaulted her or not. Not a clue. I'm taking my political goggles off. I'm taking what I feel about Joe Biden politically, which I don't think is a secret here, because I don't really think you should be, any of us should evaluate claims of sexual assault based on what we think of a person politically, what we think of them as a person. You got to look at the facts of the allegation, because the bottom line is, just because somebody has done terrible things politically, just because somebody is a warmonger, just because someone is a servant to the corporate overlords, doesn't necessarily mean they push somebody against the wall and against their will, penetrated them with their fingers. Some of you might not like me saying that, but I don't know if he did it or he didn't. And the truth is, neither do you. You might feel he did, but that doesn't mean you know he did. But what I do know is clearly, and it is exposed for the masses, the folks from Wokeback Mountain, the folks that reside at Wokeback Mountain, that would be the Alyssa Milanos of the world, let's name names at this point, That would be all the hashtag resistors out there. That would mean, all the Democratic Party politicians that were front and center. I'm talking to you, Kirsten Gillibrand, at the time, Kamala Harris, all these people that, believe women. And and by the way, I actually do believe Christine Blasey Ford, just because I saw her testimony and it seemed she was sincere, and I didn't have a reason to not believe her. However, the very criteria that all of these Democrats had when it was Brett Kavanaugh, who I have no liking or need to defend Brett Kavanaugh, but the very criteria that they had when it was Brett Kavanaugh, oh my God, that criteria is thrown out the window when it's Joe Biden. When it's one of us who we are depending on to retake the White House, we are depending on to preserve our power, we are depending on to keep the money train flowing. Well, believe women, blah, 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 blah. Well, she got to say her story and now let's move on. It's not even hypocrisy at this point. It goes much further than hypocrisy. What we are seeing, and if you're living under a rock, I mean, the Democrats and the Democratic Party, not the party, but all the hashtag resistors who were champions of Me Too, they're now calling for criminal investigations, FBI investigations of journalists who dared to report Tara Reade's allegation first. They're basically calling to cancel any journalists, any activists who are putting forth her story. Again, I don't know if it's true or it's not true. I'll tell you, like I told you the other day, why I'm inclined to believe that Biden and his campaign are trying to hide something, but it would be not sincere, it would be not genuine, and it would be unethical of me to tell you for certainty, yeah, it's true. Because honestly, to tell you the truth, and this might trigger some people, and by the way, we got a new Status Coup member, Matthew. Woohoo! Colin, I think you sent it to me, so I'll have to update it later. We're now at 1,841, so this is the wrong graphic. I'll get you the right one. So 1,841 members. Honestly, and some people might not like it, but I'm just going to be honest, believe women was a bullshit thing in the first place. Let me be clear what I mean by that so it can't be taken out of context. I don't believe anyone, a woman, a man, or somebody who's glow in the dark, just at face value, and neither should you. And I think that the Me Too movement, which started out so strong and pure, I believe, kind of conflated the women's rights movement and equality in the workplace and equal pay for equal work and all the things that we do need for women, who are the majority of the country, by the way, with sexual assault, rape, and harassment. Those are two different things. And I don't think we should believe any woman just because she's a woman making an accusation. But what I do believe is if a woman comes forward and makes an accusation, and in graphic detail, the person that they, especially somebody who's in public life working for president, has to have an answer other than it didn't happen. So the onus, I don't think the man is guilty by default, but I do think there needs to be more than it didn't happen and a coordinated, massive coordinated effort by Democratic Party machine, Democratic Party PR operatives, Democratic Party, this is like a coordinated super PAC response you're seeing on social media the last few days. Just the shaming of Tara Reade, investigations of journalists who have reported this, cancel this calls to fire a journalist who did put out a story that apparently came out not to be true, and she apologized on Twitter and took it down. Fire her. The New York Times calling for the DNC to appoint a neutral committee to investigate this? That's like calling for Debbie Wasserman Schultz to show up at your commune and, with a peace necklace and some hemp. It ain't gonna happen. So, no, the Believe Women thing, started by Alyssa Milano and these other people, they never meant it deep down. I'm not saying they're bad people, but what this is showing is when movements are hijacked by celebrities, when movements are hijacked by political operatives whose ulterior motive is always number one, power. Remember, Al Franken, who had allegations against him. Why was Kirsten Gillibrand coming out so quickly? Why is the Democratic Party coming out so quickly against Al Franken? Not because, who, by the way, said, yes, have an ethics investigation. Why did they go after him so quickly? Was it because they truly in their heart believed he did something wrong? Or was it because they couldn't have the vulnerability of Al Franken while they were trying to take back that Alabama Senate seat against, the name's escaping me, the alleged, Roy Moore. The Democrats could not have that vulnerability because that Senate seat in Alabama, which they won through Doug Jones, all they cared about was, we got to get additional power. We got to pick up another Senate seat. That's why they threw Al Franken under the bus, who, by the way, it seems like he did do some inappropriate things. Was it worth him having to resign from the Senate? And by the way, if Kirsten Gillibrand, the Me Too warrior, said Al Franken needs to resign right away, she comes out now. I believe Vice President Biden. I have faith in Vice President Biden. Yes, Believe Women. She's been able to tell her story, and now it's time to move on. How the goalposts have moved, ladies and gentlemen. And that's because this was never about truly changing discourse, changing the zeitgeist, and making men more accountable and less barbaric. This has been about power. That's not to say there aren't female empowerment activists on the ground, reproductive rights activists on the ground, sexual violence prevention and justice activists on the ground who truly mean it. But the Alyssa Milanos of the world, they don't mean it. The Kirsten Gillibrands of the world, they don't mean it. Because guess what? If they've had, let's look at Alyssa Milano. And by the way, calling out Alyssa Milano, not good for Status Coup. She's shared our stuff in the past. She's probably not going to share it now, but I don't give a shit. Because the Empress has no clothes here. The Empress has no clothes. And we got 400 people watching. 267 of you have pressed that like button. I need another 150. Press that like button. Thumbs up right under the live stream. So Alyssa Milano, who it was Believe Women automatically, suddenly, because Joe Biden was nice to her at a bunch of fundraisers, and because they took a few selfies together, and because he whispered in her ears something, and because, frankly, I'm calling it right now, she's obviously wants to run for office at some point. That's very clear. So now, Believe Women is not just Believe Women, it's hear them out, and then if it's just he said, she said, and the guy being accused is our only hope of taking out Trump, well, at least she got to make her case, and now we have to move on. This is the emptiness, not only of what the Me Too movement has become, because they've hijacked and destroyed it, these people, but it's the emptiness, the hollowness, the hypocrisy, the substanceless of our entire political system. That's why Bernie was so rare. And yes, I got my problems with him right now. I'm not abandoning Bernie, but that's why he was so rare, because he's one of the few that actually means what he says, that wasn't putting forth talking points fed to him by consultants, that wasn't a seasonal champion of women. And by the way, it could come out. It could come out in 5 days from now. Tara Reade made the whole thing up. She's a disturbed person, and she made the whole thing up. There could be proof that she made the whole thing up. That could come out. And that wouldn't change anything that I'm saying, because this is now about more than whether Joe Biden did this to this woman in 1993. This is about our opposition party, or our supposed opposition party doesn't actually stand for anything. It's just a conglomeration of a bunch of politicians bought off by banks, fossil fuel companies, big real estate firms, big pharma, Silicon Valley, special interest groups, think tanks, who say one thing when it benefits them and say a whole other thing when it doesn't. At this point, I'm not even sure if 2 or 3 other women came out alleging assault, if they wouldn't just dismiss it as, a Steve Bannon, Fox News operation. Because they don't really care if Joe Biden assaulted women. They don't. Kirsten Gillibrand doesn't care. Tom Perez doesn't care. Honestly, I don't even think Obama and his minions care, which Jen has a great report. Wait till you hear this. You're not going to hear this anywhere else. And some people might be angry at me for saying maybe she doesn't know. Maybe it didn't happen. Well, I don't know if it happened or not. Neither do you. That's the point. But what I do know, and I said this yesterday, the key questions were not asked to Joe Biden. And these are really, at this point, the only questions that matter. Number one, why was Tara Reade demoted at your office? This doesn't seem to be under suspicion. She was demoted from her duties at your office, which her duties seem to be overseeing the interns in the office. The New York Times and others corroborated with 2 interns that all of a sudden she wasn't managing them. It was abrupt. Thank you for the super chat. Kent Bauer, $9.99. Keep up the good work, Jordan. Thank you, Kent. Appreciate the super chat. Keep it coming if you can. Let's see if I missed anything in GoFundMe. All right, not yet. No, nothing in GoFundMe yet. Keep it coming if you can. GoFundMe would be nice. We are at $98,320. $98,320. Why was she demoted? Joe Biden doesn't seem to have an answer for that. And frankly, if he was asked, he would probably say, I can't remember the details of personnel from 27 years ago. Well, somebody in your office has to remember the details from 27 years ago. That ain't going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. Secondly, if Joe Biden, again, everyone's saying, oh, Mika did a good job. Well, since the bar is so low for corporate media, they think she did a good job. I don't particularly think she did a good job, because this is the obvious question. Vice President Biden, if you're saying that there's no personnel records, which would show if a complaint was made, then why is it that your campaign sent operatives to look through the University of Delaware records? If you're so sure that the only records there are your policy papers, transcripts of your speeches, floor votes, whatever, just policy-oriented stuff, and there's no personnel records, why did your campaign send operatives there to go through it? The Business Insider reported this. The campaign hasn't disputed it. And University of Delaware came out saying, yes, officials for the Biden campaign were here looking through records as recently as March. If you and your campaign, and by the way, his campaign, one of the top people is Anita Dunn, who was Harvey Weinstein's PR crisis communications person as woman after woman was coming out accusing him of rape, which he was convicted for. So Joe Biden's got professional sleaze around him in Anita Dunn. Do you think the statement that Joe Biden put out there was written by Joe Biden? You think Joe Biden prepared for his Morning Joe interview all on his own? You think the narrative that they were putting forth, unequivocal denial, there's no personnel records there, you think that was his idea to put those words and thoughts out there? This is coordinated public relations. This is coordinated crisis communications. And there are two obvious holes that Joe Biden hasn't been asked about, that Tom Perez has not been asked about, that none of these senators and potential vice presidential picks have been asked about. Why was she demoted then? And then fired from the office? Nobody's disputing that she was demoted and fired. Number two, if there are no personnel records at the University of Delaware, what were your campaign officials there for, looking through boxes? Did they move anything? Because when there's smoke, there's generally fire. JK, $5 in the super chat. How infuriating is it that neoliberals say, but Obama vetted him, as if that means case closed because Obama is a bastion of virtue. I got news for you. This talking point that Obama vetted him, Obama's vice presidential vetting crew was not going through nearly 2,000 boxes at the University of Delaware. Neither was John McCain's crew when they picked Sarah Palin. These vetting processes are not as thorough as they would like you to believe. He picked Biden for one reason and one reason only. Obama was a black dude and he had a problem with older white men, and picking Joe Biden helped him with that problem. Sorry to say it, that's the truth. So just because Obama and the Democrats didn't find necessarily this doesn't mean anything. So I'm going to show you the latest and a really cringeworthy interview by Tom Perez. This was a reporter, I believe, from the Associated Press. New York Times. Tara Reade canceled her interview with Fox News, claiming that she was getting death threats. Her and her child were getting death threats. I don't have any reason not to believe that, seeing the venom that is on Twitter right now and has been in the last few days aimed against her. Then the Associated Press, which frankly seemed like they wrote whatever the Biden campaign fed them, again, talking points to try and discredit her. First, they put out a headline, Tara Reade did not, sexual assault or sexual harassment not mentioned in Biden complaint. Then Tara Reade tweeted out, this is false. Then they changed it to, I didn't use sexual harassment in Biden complaint. What this story is trying to do is basically frame it, and again, this to me, because I've worked in media, this, how it works, the campaigns, the politicians, the spin artists around them, feed the journalist whatever the framing they want, and the journalists dutifully repeat it. So what they're trying to do is basically make it so if she didn't use the actual term sexual harassment in a complaint, then it discredits her. Even though, by her account, what she described is sexual harassment if the complaint exists and if she described this. Right. I remember talking about him wanting me to serve drinks because he liked my legs and thought I was pretty and it made me uncomfortable. I know that I was too scared to write about the sexual assault. So Ryan Grimm, who broke major parts of this story early on, tweeted out, this is consistent with what she told me and others about the complaint. Ryan McHugh, who wrote for Business Insider about the neighbor who corroborated that Tara Reade had told her about this alleged assault in 1995, 2 years after it presumably happened. This is consistent with what she told me about the complaint as well. So the Associated Press reported this as some big oh, we got her. She didn't actually, in the complaint, she didn't say anything about assault or sexual harassment using the quotes sexual harassment. Okay, but what does it matter if she used the term sexual harassment? It's the sentiment of what she was saying made her uncomfortable. By the way, even she had said, I didn't bring up the sexual assault then. I brought up things he was doing that made me uncomfortable. She didn't use the phrase sexual harassment. It doesn't discredit that she might have written a complaint and talked about Biden basically saying things that objectified her. So this is the kind of gotcha attempts to discredit her by essentially moving the goalposts and putting in things that she never said she said. She never said, I said it was sexual harassment, almost as a way to show she's lying. JK, $5. It's not uncommon for women to receive death threats and rape threats when speaking out about abuse. Look up Jessica Taylor. Great point. By the way, we got 500 people watching. 379 of you have pressed that like button. I need another 200 of you. Please press the like button. We got a report coming up from Jen on Biden's donors and the hypocrisy of these female vice presidential candidates. We also have a great interview with a leader from Navajo Nation on how the coronavirus is ravaging through Navajo Nation, which makes up parts of Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona. You're not going to see this anywhere else. So let me show you profile and courage Tom Perez leading with his values on this on a. I really hope you're not on an empty stomach. Hold on. That's why.
With Joe Biden did have days to prepare for his interview about Tara Reade. He denied the allegations and urged the National Archives to release any alleged complaint from Tara Reade. But the archives said they are not responsible for records like that. Biden now says in a formal letter that he was mistaken, that it was at the archives, and asked the Secretary of the Senate for help.
Mm-hmm. Joe Biden has been very clear, Martha, that this did not happen. He was forceful in that, and he's been equally clear that when women come forward with complaints of this nature, they should be taken seriously. Their complaints should be investigated. They should be treated with dignity, and he's done exactly that. He called for the Senate to release any documents they have. She indicated that she filed a complaint. Joe Biden wants that complaint released. He is an open book. He understands that it's important for the information to get out.
But Mr. Perez, I want to stop you right there. Biden also says he will not release documents from his years in the Senate, now at the University of Delaware, because they don't contain personnel matters. And he kind of brushed aside suggestions that a search be done of just Tara Reade's name in those documents. The New York Times editorial board called for the DNC to convene an unbiased, apolitical panel to review portions of Biden's papers, saying his word is insufficient to dispel the cloud. Your communications director has called that idea absurd. Why?
Well, listen, there's been so many investigations of the vice president. The most comprehensive investigation of the vice president was when he was vetted by Barack Obama in 2008. I'm very familiar with vice presidential vetting process. They look at everything about you. They looked at the entire history of Joe Biden, his entire career. And I'll tell you, if Barack Obama had any indication that there was an issue, Barack Obama would not have had him as his vice president. Barack Obama trusted Joe Biden. I trust Joe Biden. And those investigations have been done. Now, let's talk about Delaware for a moment. The University of Delaware, and any university that takes somebody's documents, they're taking their policy documents, they're taking their speeches, they're not taking their personnel records. And in fact,
but why not just search Tara Reade in those documents?
This is like the Hillary emails, because there was nothing there. And the reason is, if I'm going, I worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee in 1995. The ranking member was Joe Biden. If you want, I wasn't working for Joe Biden, I was working for Senator Kennedy. If you want to see my personnel records, you don't go to the Kennedy Institute. That's not where they go. And so when you ask the University of Delaware to take a look at something, you're asking them to look for something that doesn't exist. And the fact of the matter is that the President of the United States, the former President, Barack Obama, conducted an exhaustive search.
And that was 2008.
Open book.
So, first of all, again, I don't have a lot of high standards for cable news shows. That was relatively grilling Tom Perez. But the obvious question, if it's not there, what was Biden campaign operatives looking through? The Business Insider reported. They went to the University of Delaware and they looked through his records. If it's such a certainty that there's no personnel records there, what were they doing? Smoking a doobie in the closet at University of Delaware? Opening boxes? It's laughable. And by the way, we've already played this game, because Biden, during his Morning Joe interview, had said it would be at the National Archives. The National Archives said we don't have personnel files. They would be at the University of Delaware. So it's like it's like these cases where the state blames the city blames the state, or you call one doctor and they say no, you got to call this office. You call that office, they tell you no, you got to call the original office you called. Well, if it's definitely not at the University of Delaware, what's the big deal with allowing? By the way, it's laughable that the New York Times is calling for the DNC, which at this point I think is a criminal enterprise. The DNC will appoint neutral arbiters to go check this out? No. I'm not letting the police investigate itself. Thank you, Tanaka, $5 in the super chat. I wonder if these people analyzing Reade's credibility are as interested in Biden's history of lying, not to mention his history of creepy behavior. Thank you. JK, $5. Oh, I read that one. Thank you. Did I miss any others? Keep them coming in the super chat. So it's just laughable. The whole thing is laughable. Biden campaign did not dispute Business Insider that they already sent officials and operatives there, potentially as recently as March. So around the same time that Tara Reade was doing the interview with Katie Halper at first. Nobody has an explanation for what were they doing there. If zero personnel records exist at the University of Delaware, why were his campaign operatives sent there? But again, as I said in the beginning, it doesn't even matter if they find the complaint, because he's just going to they'll move the goalposts further. Oh, well, the Obama administration, the Obama campaign didn't, vetting doesn't include going through nearly 2,000 boxes at the University of Delaware. So yeah, they might have missed this. And maybe she made a complaint, and maybe Joe might have made a comment offhand that made her uncomfortable. But that was, almost 30 years ago. Times were different, and the vice president apologizes if he ever made any comments to her or anyone else. They'll move the goalposts, even if a complaint is found, because they don't care if Joe Biden pushed her against the wall or anyone else. Here's what they care about: the two options. They care about defeating Donald Trump so that they could have a Democrat in power. And they care about making sure a progressive never gets in power, because it's all about the money. I give you this story. Perfect example. Organizers for the 2020 Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee spend nearly $4 million in 9 months, up 15% from 2016. Newly filed federal records show the DNC Convention Committee has already spent more than $3.9 million doing prep work for the national event since July 2019. That's up by some $500,000 over what the committee spent during the same nine-month period in the run-up to the 2016 Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, a 15% increase in expenditures. March was one of the busiest months by far for the DNC Convention Committee, which paid out more than $870,000 on planning, payroll, and consulting. Because consultants got to make their money. And most of those consultants are also CNN contributors. No conflict of interest there. So this is what it's all about. It's keeping the money. Oh, Joe Biden did some bad things towards women. Well, Trump is worse. And by the way, Trump has done awful things. There's enough allegations against Trump to know he's done wrong. He's done reprehensible things when it comes to women. I think when you have 14 to 20 allegations, they're not all lying, even though the media has let Donald Trump off the hook in regards to that. But it doesn't matter at this point if they find a complaint she made. They will change the discussion. They will move the goalpost. It doesn't even matter at this point. I think if another 2 or 3 women come out, they'll call it a Republican operation. They'll say it's the Republicans with the Bernie Bros, because they don't care. They don't care about protecting women, maybe on the margins. But if protecting women means having to sacrifice power, having to sacrifice the money train, Kirsten Gillibrand, she just showed it. And by the way, if you don't think Tom Perez and all these other people coming out saying Joe Biden has already been vetted, go ask Obama and his campaign, which David Axelrod, who is Obama's senior advisor, put that out on Twitter. That's called coordinated talking points, because this response, which is aimed to smear Tara Reade, is a political operation. And by the way, I don't have any facts to prove this. Isn't it interesting that on Twitter, like, all of these hashtags just go right to the top right away? Right? I believe Joe. Go Joe. Tara Reade is a liar. All of these things move up so quickly on Twitter's algorithm. Just saying. Just saying. Thank you for the super chat. Art, the interview by Miko was weak. I agree. Everyone said she did such a great job because we have no standards for a journalist anymore. I don't think it was strong at all. I think she played right into the campaign's framing. JK, $5. Remember when in a debate Biden answered a question about domestic violence against women? He kept saying we have to keep, quote, punching at it. I do remember that. What else did I miss here? Jen sent me the list. Hold on. Okay. Remember when JK Suffrageme, $10. Vote Green Party. I picked a side, and it's for the working class. Hey, I say vote your conscience. Don't be shamed into voting for who the DNC wants you to vote for. By the way, thank you very much, Gene Shaheed. $50 in the GoFundMe. Love you, Gene. Ajumu, $10 in the GoFundMe. So we're now at $98,380. Keep it coming. Status Coup, like a lot of businesses, has been hit hard by coronavirus, especially that we can't go out in the field. We did apply for a loan. Haven't heard back, and I'm not banking on it, us getting a loan. So definitely, of course, if you don't have the money, no problem. But if you have a couple bucks, leave it in our GoFundMe or the Super Chat. The last thing I'll say about this before we move on, there's also another element here that I haven't heard anyone talk about, right? Joe Biden was married to Jill Biden when this allegedly happened, right? So he would not want to admit that he did something heinous because he's running for president, but he was also married. So if he were to admit to doing anything improper, I'm assuming him and his wife have had conversations about this, and he has promised her none of this is true. I don't know if he was a man, a sleazy DC politician cheating on his wife, like a lot of them do. But he wasn't asked, have you spoken with your wife about this? Have you ever been unfaithful to her? Uncomfortable conversations for a journalist to ask, but it comes into, for this particular allegation, it's relevant if he's ever been unfaithful to his wife. I know that we're supposed to just bow down to Joe Biden because he's had some tragedy in his life, which I feel bad about. Whether you like him politically or not, he did lose his first wife, his daughter. We obviously feel for him. His son through cancer. But I think it's a relevant question. Have you ever been unfaithful to your wife? Because if he were doing these things and assaulting women like this, even if they were not, it was against their will, obviously, if he did this, it would show he was attempting to cheat on his wife. He was attempting to spark intimacy with other women. So why is nobody asking about that? Is it because it's too personal? Well, you're running for president. And by the way, I don't particularly want to hear that Donald Trump is so much worse. Donald Trump, to me, it's pretty clear he has assaulted women. You don't have 15 to 20 women coming out making similar accusations. But I don't think we as Americans, whether you're progressive, neoliberal, conservative, libertarian, whatever, should have a standard of the lesser of two rapists. And in this case, alleged rapists, but that's still, that's really what they're trying to push forward. And I don't accept that. Swirly Swirl, $10 in the super chat. If we don't give Democrats or Republicans our attention anymore, then they will lose power. I'm voting for the Green Party in November. I'll be happy to accept blame for Dems losing. I'm hearing a lot of that, and I can't blame you. I really can't. Swirly Swirl, $5. We should listen to women and use good judgment with what evidence we have. Thank you. That's what I'm saying. I don't mean to say, I don't mean to tarnish or poo-poo the believe women, the thought behind it. I think it really is take a woman's allegation seriously, particularly when you're talking about somebody running for president. But also, if there's holes in a woman's story, let's not declare somebody guilty by tweet. Let's not declare people guilty for no reason. If there are facts that show something doesn't smell right here with this allegation. But it's really, really disheartening to see all of these empty vessels like Kirsten Gillibrand, Stacey Abrams, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, all of these people who were so #resistance. Now, well, I believe Vice President Biden. If he says it didn't happen, it's good enough for me. Well, that certainly wasn't your standard a few years ago. And by your hypocrisy, by your, I'm making up a phrase here, empty vessel-ism, you are really damaging what the Me Too movement was supposed to be for. And you're damaging real assault victims by basically being seasonal champions of women. I want to move on. Jen did a great report. Joe Biden had a virtual fundraiser which essentially was a class reunion of the Obama administration. And we're going to get, Jen goes through in the video all of these people's conflicts of interest, all of these people's sleaziness, but she also ties it in some ways to the Tara Reade allegations. So don't go anywhere. This is going to be a great report. We got 581 people watching. 486 of you have pressed that like button. Can I get another 100 of you? Please press that thumbs up button. It's your constitutional duty as an American, and we have a lot of people watching around the world. So please press that thumbs up button. Keep those super chats coming. Did I miss any? Exulas, $5. America needs a strong third-party option. Please help the Green Party reach the 5% threshold this November. H20, go green. And yes, this week I'm going to be speaking about this a little bit more because you have more mainstream progressives coming out now saying to hell with retaking the Democratic or taking over the Democratic Party. Roseanne DeMauro, the former head of National Nurses United, is now calling for progressive third party, and several others I'm seeing on Twitter that even were in Bernie's campaign are calling for progressive third party. So we'll definitely talk about that. I would love to interview Jesse Ventura, who might be running. So we're going to get to all of that. But stick around for this great interview with Jen, and then we're going to have, I really hope you stick around for this because you're not going to see this type of content anywhere else. We have a very, very important interview with a council member at Navajo Nation coming up soon. Navajo Nation is getting hit really hard by coronavirus, and I think we in the media have a responsibility to spotlight our indigenous communities and how they are being ravaged by things like coronavirus, because you're certainly not going to see CNN or MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post lifting a finger to cover indigenous people's struggles with this. So here we go. Here's Jen.
Another one of Joe Biden's fundraisers. He's been doing these virtual fundraisers, as we've talked about here at Status Coup, and they're always filled with interesting people. By interesting people, I mean the most corrupt, big-moneyed people and Democratic operatives possible. And today's a real doozy, especially in light of the sexual assault allegations made by Tara Reade against Joe Biden. And we'll get into why that's sort of an interesting thing to observe when it comes to these particular people who attended his most recent virtual fundraisers. So let's look at who attended. I assume they do these on Zoom or whatever. They just have Joe Biden there in his basement room that you've seen on TV when he does his own little speeches or whatever he's doing. So they have people attend virtually from their own houses, just like they would, well, not just like they would do, but they would normally attend in person at a really fancy mansion or something like that. But now they're attending from their own fancy mansions in their own homes through Zoom. So let's take a look at the most recent fundraiser. This one was held on May 1st, so just a couple of days ago as I record this. And they always have these pool reports. So the pool reports, they send one or two journalists kind of in to observe what's going on. So in this case, observing virtually. This by Edward Isaac DeVory from The Atlantic. Joe Biden held his latest virtual fundraiser late Friday afternoon with a group of Obama administration and campaign alumni. Now, I'm going to get into these Obama administration people who attended. Obviously, Joe Biden was in the Obama administration. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense that they would now be surrounding him. It's no surprise at all that Obama people are surrounding Joe Biden and supporting Joe Biden. Just literally no surprise at all. But that doesn't mean there's not stuff we can get into here. His campaign says 2,200 people participated and that they had already raised $1 million by the time the call started. Biden started off saying, "It's wonderful to be with family again. Oh, how sweet." And made a joke toward the beginning of his remarks that he was doing a riff on the old JFK line by saying that the people on the call made for the greatest collection of political talent, with the possible exception of Barack Obama, zooming alone. Oh, Uncle Joe, so funny. He addressed the Tara Reade allegations from the start, those comments below. The event was moderated by Julie Chavez Rodriguez and started with remarks by former Obama senior advisor Valerie Jarrett, who we will get into, and then went to a conversation between Biden campaign manager Jen O'Malley Dillon, formerly of the Beto campaign, the Beto Standing on Stuff campaign, and Obama 2008 campaign manager David Plouffe. Biden made remarks and took questions once they had all finished. We'll get into Valerie and Jen O'Malley Dillon and David Plouffe in just a second here. But let's take a look at what Biden said and what others said at this fundraiser. Valerie Jarrett began by saying that when Obama had been looking for his running mate, Biden was at the top of the list before the process started. Then they did necessary background checks and vetting, she said. And guess who was at the top of that list at the end of it? Vice President Joe Biden. So let's, excuse me, let's take a look at this sort of talking point that the Obama administration is so fond of now, and all these Democratic operatives are so fond of now. And we'll get into a piece by David Axelrod as well. They're saying now, oh, he was vetted. This would have come up. So we can't really put aside the fact that Tara Reade, however you pronounce her name, I believe she pronounces it Tara. I will correct if that's incorrect. But she says that she submitted a complaint at the time. She didn't say the words sexual harassment. There's some debate over whether or not that was really even in the lexicon at that time, the words sexual harassment. But she says she submitted a complaint that would have hinted at that, or she felt uncomfortable, I believe was one word that she said in her complaint, according to her. So when these people are saying they vetted him and that this complaint didn't come up, that's one question we have. What did they go through? Are they telling the truth? Where are these papers? Where is this one complaint of Tara Reade's that she says exists? There's a lot of questions surrounding that. But wider than that, they're trying to say, oh, Tara Reade's complaints didn't come up at all during this time. Well, no wonder, because she only just now came forward publicly with these allegations against Joe Biden. Back when they were vetting Biden for the vice presidency, this wouldn't have come up apart from the paper, which there are a lot of questions about apart from that complaint. It wouldn't have come up because she hadn't yet made her complaint public. She hadn't yet talked about the sexual assault allegation. So it's no wonder that it didn't come up, but they're using this as a talking point to placate Biden supporters so that they go back to sleep and say, oh, this is all okay, there's nothing to this. So pay attention to how these operatives are operating. She spoke about his deep working relationship with Obama in the White House and observing his empathy over the years, blah, blah, blah. Let's see here. Yeah, let's go right on down to what Biden said about Tara Reade. Your trust and faith has always meant a great deal to me. So first, let me say unequivocally, this claim is simply not true. It did not happen. And for those who are, let me back up a second. For those who are unfamiliar with this claim, Tara Reade has claimed that Joe Biden, when she worked for him when he was in the Senate and she worked for him as a Senate aide, that back in 1993, that he put her up against a wall and penetrated her against her will with his fingers. So that is the sexual assault allegation that is in question here. There are other instances of him making her feel very uncomfortable as a staffer, including talking about her nice legs and things like that, and touching the back of her neck, stroking the back of her neck, things like that. Your trust and faith has always meant a great deal to me, so first let me say unequivocally, this claim is simply not true. It did not happen. Now, my knowledge that it isn't true does nothing to shake my belief that women have to be able to be heard, and that all the claims taken seriously. It isn't enough to just to simply take my word for it and to dismiss it out of hand. Frankly, that shouldn't be enough for anyone, because we know that this sort of approach is exactly how the culture of abuse has been allowed to fester for so long. So I'm heartened to see it, although it's painful sometimes, that by and large, journalists are doing what they're supposed to do. They're going out there listening to the allegations, they're taking it seriously, and they're investigating it. And they're talking with folks, excuse me, frog in my throat, who were there at the time, scrutinizing personnel records, examining the evolution of the claims, looking into the culture of our office. And I'm not concerned about what they might find, because I know the truth of the matter. I know that this claim has no merit. But as a candidate for president, I'm accountable to the American people. and I welcome that accountability and the scrutiny of the press as well. And then he goes on to talk about the Violence Against Women Act and his, work there. So now let's talk about, there's not much to say about that. I mean, he's going to deny it. It's just standard denial there. Let's start talking about the people that he's surrounded himself with here. One of them, actually, let me skip over to this really quick. This is a pool report from a fundraiser on April 30th. I just wanted to point out that Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's longtime aide, attended that one. So it's a good old boys and girls club here. Now let's talk about some of these people who have attended, and we'll relate it to the Tara Reade allegation as well. We have here Valerie Jarrett, former senior advisor to President Obama. Valerie Jarrett's winding path to the Obamas' inner circle. And I just want to point out some of the work that she's done. Valerie Jarrett was a senior advisor to President Barack Obama during both of his terms, is a close friend to Michelle Obama, directed an important real estate firm, and has served as the chair of the Chicago Transit Authority Board, chair of the Chicago Stock Exchange, and chair of the Board of Trustees of the University of Chicago Medical Center. She chaired the White House Council on Women and Girls and co-chaired the White House Task Force to protect students from sexual assault. So here we have someone who co-chaired the White House Task Force to protect students from sexual assault, going up to bat in a fundraiser for someone who has been credibly accused of sexual assault. Obviously, I do not know if the claims are true, but I do know that there is corroboration. A former neighbor of Tara Reade has corroborated this, her brother. I believe at this point the count is going up. I don't want to say the number, but there are now several corroborating statements out there that she told them at the time of varying degrees about either the harassment or the alleged assault. So we have Valerie Jarrett, who is purportedly a champion for people and young girls who have been sexually assaulted. But here she is at an Obama fundraiser. It's really no surprise. All of these Me Too advocates have turned out, not all of them, but many of them have turned out to be complete and total hypocrites when it's not politically convenient for them. They want Joe Biden to be president at any cost. They want to defeat Donald Trump, and with good reason. There is to want to defeat Donald Trump. Absolutely. Let's get him out of the White House. But not with someone who's been credibly accused of sexual assault. Let's not pretend to be #MeToo advocates like Alyssa Milano and then turn around and support Joe Biden. Without question. They didn't even wait for him to come out and make his statements. They didn't wait. They support him no matter what, because it's politically convenient for them. They don't want to go up against one of their own. Oh, and by the way, they're talking about how thoroughly they vet things. Barack Obama's daughter worked for Harvey Weinstein basically right before it broke. It was an open secret in Hollywood. It was an open secret among elites that Harvey Weinstein was a scumbag. And yet they vetted him so carefully that Barack Obama's daughter went to work for him for a brief period of time. So if they're talking about how well they vet things, how supportive they are of sexual assault victims, it's all a facade. They don't truly have any conviction, these people. So if Joe Biden's talking about surrounding himself with the best political minds, well, maybe that's the case, because these political minds are completely disingenuous. They don't have any convictions, and it's absolutely disgusting. None of them care about this sexual assault complaint. They don't care about Tara Reade. They see her as a nuisance. They just want to shoo her away like a little bug. All because it threatens Joe Biden and the empire that they have already built. There's a lot more to Valerie Jarrett, but I don't want to make this video 100 hours long. I could go on and on about each of these people, but just know that Valerie Jarrett is very, very trusted by Obama and the people in Obama's orbit. The New Republic in 2014 came out with an article titled "The Obama Whisperer." Basically, Valerie Jarrett would go on vacations with the Obamas. He would consult her on major decisions. She was just always there whispering in his ear. She has major, major, major influence over Obama-style, Biden-style Democrats. So if she chose to stand up for women truly, then she would have that influence, but she's choosing not to use it. Again, because it's not politically convenient. I'll try to link to these articles in the description so that you can look at them. Another person who had attended this fundraiser is Jen O'Malley Dillon. You may remember Jen O'Malley Dillon from being Beto's campaign manager. Then, obviously, Beto didn't work out. Standing on things didn't work out for him. If you remember, he would just stand on stuff and talk to people in the beginning of his campaign. It was a little bit weird. Well, Joe Biden scooped her up, Jen O'Malley Dillon, as new campaign manager. Not much to say about this. She has tremendous influence in the Democratic Party as well. Obviously, if someone like Joe Biden is going to choose her to be the campaign manager, she's got a lot of influence. She's also influential in the Clinton world. Clinton and Obama worlds are essentially the same thing, of course. This back in 2017 by journalist Michael Sonato, a tweet. The co-chair of the DNC Unity Commission, Jen O'Malley Dillon, worked for the DNC and Clinton campaign at the same time during the primaries. She openly supported Clinton. Her firm received over $1 million from the DNC and Clinton campaign during the 2016 election. So that's just to show you Jen O'Malley Dillon, another just deeply, deeply seated Democratic Party operative, one of the leaders, just very, very influential. Where is she on these sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden? She's there, gleefully supporting him on this virtual fundraiser. Again, a lot more to say about all of these people. It's stunning, really. It's not surprising, but it's stunning just how they support each other, this world that they've built. This is the reason why Bernie didn't have a chance in the end. Bernie didn't fight for it like he should have. He absolutely should have fought for it harder, much, much harder. He should have come out strongly against Joe Biden. But when you look at all of these people who truly control the DNC and the Democratic Party, it's really no wonder. It was always going to be Joe Biden. If Bernie had fought harder, maybe he could have beat out based on, his support from the people. Maybe he could have garnered that additional support that he needed by showing who these people truly are. But he didn't fight. And that's a shame. Because now these people who have always been around in the Clinton and the Obama eras, now they are maybe going to be back in control again. I don't know if Joe Biden has an actual chance. I don't even know if he'll actually be the nominee, or if maybe he'll have to be replaced based on his cognitive decline. We always say it. We're not doctors. We're just people with eyeballs. There's something not right with Joe Biden. And now with this sexual assault complaint, you have to wonder what the people are going to do. Are these Democratic operatives that swirl around him, are they enough? We'll have to see. So let's get into David Plouffe here. The ticket beating Donald Trump with David Plouffe. David Plouffe got it very wrong in 2016. And that's the thing. All of these people who thought they knew so well in 2016, who thought that Hillary Clinton would absolutely be the Democratic nominee, they all got it so wrong. So here, going back to the question, can Joe Biden beat Donald Trump? I don't know. These people, as powerful as they are, these Democratic operatives, as powerful as they are, I don't know. They don't really seem to have their finger on the pulse of America. David Plouffe got it wrong in 2016. He's gotten it wrong over and over again. And it's scary. Now, famously, David Plouffe was Barack Obama's campaign manager, and people claim him responsible for Obama's win in 2008. Here is David Plouffe just on May 1st, the same day as this virtual fundraiser, saying, "Not a whisper. Obama team fully vetted Biden in 2008 and found no hint of former aides allegation." This is the piece that I mentioned earlier by David Axelrod, another Obama guy. He's not listed as being present at the fundraiser, although we don't have the full list. Doesn't matter. He's saying that they fully vetted Tara Reade, or excuse me, they fully vetted Joe Biden and found no hint of Tara Reade's allegation. When it became clear that Barack Obama would be the nominee of the Democratic Party in the spring of 2008, he commissioned a team of lawyers to begin an in-depth vetting process of potential candidates for vice president. Dozens of women and men under consideration were reviewed. Those who rose on the list of contenders were subject to a deep dive investigation of their strengths, vulnerabilities, and of course any disqualifying defects. At the top of the list of those contenders was Senator Joseph R. Biden of Delaware, Joseph Robinette Biden. The comprehensive vet certainly would have turned up any formal complaints filed against Biden during his 36-year career in the Senate. It did not. The team would have investigated any salacious rumors of the sort that travel far and wide in Washington. That's the thing. Nobody seems to truly know where this allegation would be. Where is it? Nobody knows. Joe Biden is saying it's in the National Archives. The National Archives, last I read, there's so much conflicting information out there. It's so hard to keep track, truly, because there's so much spin, there's so many lies. The National Archives is saying, no, it wouldn't be here. Joe Biden's saying it would be there. Tara Reade at one point said it would be in the National Archives. Now she thinks it might be at the University of Delaware. Many people think it might be at the University of Delaware. The thing is, as we've reported here at Status Coup, Joe Biden is calling for the National Archives to open up and release anything that might be there. But when it comes to the University of Delaware papers, he's saying, oh, no. There's more than 1,800 boxes, so we can't, there's no time to go through all those, and it wouldn't be there. The complaint by Tara Reade wouldn't be there. So, no. We're not going to open those up. Plus, he had the audacity to say that that there's stuff in there that his political opponents could use against him. So he doesn't want it out there. Well, what are you hiding, Joe? I mean, so all these people who were saying he was thoroughly vetted, the thing is nobody knows where this paper is. Or if they do know, they're not being forthright about it. Nobody knows where this complaint could be. Or they're lying about it. So it could be at the University of Delaware. We don't know because people haven't gone through those boxes. It looks like it either would be at the National Archives or would not be. The reporting there is so conflicted. But Joe Biden, for political reasons, has called for that to be opened up and released to the public if it's there. Anyway, that's sort of the background. If you're confused, don't worry, we all are. Back to David Axelrod, while I was not on the vetting team as senior strategist to the campaign, I was briefed on their work and potential problems. Through that entire process, the name Tara Reade never came up. no formal complaint, no informal chatter, certainly no intimation of sexual harassment or assault from her or anyone else. The team of investigators, expert in their work, would not have missed it. Well, that's because she hadn't, she'd made the complaint, according to her, back when it happened, back in the 1990s. But she didn't become public with this complaint until recently. The sexual assault allegations until recently. So obviously it wouldn't have come up in the vetting of Obama. This is just spin by all these Obama-Biden people. It's disgusting. Okay, this video is getting pretty long, so I have a lot more to say. We will continue covering Joe Biden and the Tara Reade allegations. We will keep trying to get Tara Reade to do an interview with us. She's very busy right now, and she's also being threatened. So for being in the public eye, she's being threatened, and her daughter are now getting death threats. They're being doxxed online. Her and her family's addresses and things like that, and I believe her social security number has now been posted. There are some really disgusting people who are now attacking Tara Reade, just like they did way back when with Juanita Broderick. When you come for a Democrat, you get crushed. Imagine if this were a Republican, how all of these Democrats would be acting completely differently with this credible accusation of sexual assault. A lot of hypocrites out there, a lot of disgusting people who are propping up Joe Biden at these virtual fundraisers and elsewhere. All right, until next time, this has been Jen, and we will keep reporting. Bye-bye.
That was Jen Dyes with the great report. If you notice, my head is a little higher in the United Corporate flag as I am standing instead of sitting. My lower back's a little tight. I think it's from sitting around. This cabin fever, this coronavirus quarantine, getting my lower back tight. I've had 2 back surgeries in the last 2 years. I don't want a third, so that's why I'm standing. Hopefully, it's the same good journalism, just standing. So, great report by Jen, very thorough about the revolving door of Obama world, who, by the way, let's just be real, Obama world was behind the, Kyle Kalinske calls it Bloody Monday, where they got, Mayor Mayor Pete to drop out, Amy to drop out, and get the entire establishment like ducks in a row behind Joe Biden. And by the way, Joe Biden got $100 million of free advertising between CNN and MSNBC and the rest of the corporate media between his victory in South Carolina and Super Tuesday. And reports said Obama got on the phone with Amy, with Pete, all these people. So don't think Obama world has been pulling the strings from the get-go to get what they want. And what they wanted, number one, was to stop Bernie Sanders, because by all costs, we have to keep Barack's legacy, that legacy of a shitty right-wing healthcare plan hatched out of the Heritage Foundation. And by all means, we have to keep President Obama's legacy of Obamacare and mealy-mouthed crumbs for you and I. So that's what this has always been about. They were kind of hedging their bets, but at the end, they saw Biden clean up in South Carolina, so then Obama got involved and got everybody behind the empty vessel that has become Joe Biden. So, I want to move on now. We still got a pretty good audience. Make sure you press the share button, get this out to more people. So, yesterday I interviewed Carl Rosal. He is a member of the Navajo Nation. He's an elected council member of Navajo Nation. If you're not aware, Navajo Nation is I believe, the largest Native American tribe in the United States. It crosses Arizona, parts of Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico. It is, by its territory, as large as states like West Virginia. And it is, unfortunately, like many tribes, one of the most poor areas without the resources needed, particularly when you're facing what we're facing now, which is the coronavirus. By the way, as these moronic governors are reopening the economy, which is ridiculous because nobody has money to spend right now. People are getting laid off by the tens of millions. This was Thursday, was reported as the deadliest day in America. So you have the deadliest day where 2,909 people died in 24 hours, yet they are reopening economies, quote, in a safe way. Well, meanwhile, here in New York yesterday, my girlfriend and I walked just to get out of the house. There are people closely congregating in Central Park and elsewhere, not wearing masks, certainly not 6 feet apart. It's happening in Florida and other states where beaches are reopening. Obviously, we see these morons, and I don't care if they have the constitutional right to act like morons, at the Michigan Capitol, storming the gates with their guns. And I even fought with someone on Twitter this morning who's telling me, these corona truthers, oh, it's no different than the seasonal flu. And look at Sweden. They didn't do all this lockdowns and stay-at-home orders and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, what's the difference between Sweden and the United States? Sweden has 10 million people. We have 330 million. That's slightly different. Or pushing the constitutional argument. Well, I'm sorry. I don't give a shit what these men wrote in 1776 when the United States was 4 million people. And it was just colonies. Because your constitutional right to go out and act like an idiot is not more profound or more safeguarded than my right to live. My girlfriend's right to live. Your right to live. So let me explain how this works. Since this person on Twitter, let me see if I could pull up the tweet and just shame him, because I enjoy doing this. Sorry, pal. You messed with the wrong tweeter. Here we go. Oh, where is it? Here we go. So I tweeted out, and some of you watching might disagree with me, but I just think you're all wrong. Sorry. So I tweeted out to the conspiracy hacks out there who keep sending me, quote, coronavirus isn't real nonsense. You're as bad as Alex Jones' Newtown truthers. The horrible people who said the Sandy Hook massacre was staged and wasn't real. So this guy, Carlos Rodriguez, it's like a seasonal flu, killing those with weakened immune systems and pre-existing conditions. The experts have tried moving the goalposts, but the field isn't getting longer, it's getting shorter. No vaccines, no $1,000 pills, no profits off a crisis. Yeah, the field's getting shorter, just the highest death count in America 2 days ago. The field's getting shorter. So I wrote, last time I checked, the seasonal flu didn't produce packed emergency rooms for months and kill healthy young people. You're a moron. Sorry. He said, in major cities. So we shut down the rest of the country because New York City and a few Democrat-controlled cities have it bad? Meanwhile, the true COVID death counts continue to drop. The narrative is falling apart, you shill. So I said, I didn't know Louisiana was a Democratic state, or Florida, Texas, Georgia, Indiana, which have all had high cases. He said, funny, I never said state. I think you did. I think you did say state. But putting that aside, the hot spots are in Democratic-controlled cities, which is such a ridiculous fucking argument. Like this is a political thing? Are in Democratic-controlled cities, and most deaths are in Democratic-controlled states. Look at the top 8 states. They have over half the deaths. So we shut down the other 42 states, and the 40th state shut down until mid-July? Yeah, okay. So I had to explain this like it's a third grader, and I hope you guys don't mind. A deadly virus doesn't stop at a state or country's border. It isn't as simple as saying there's only a few hotspots in X states or cities, so open up the rest. Because if you reopen areas where numbers aren't as bad as New York, what happens when asymptomatic people in lesser hit states, I don't know where the rest of that went. I was basically saying, what happens No, I guess that didn't go through. What I was saying is, what happens when people in lesser hit states that are asymptomatic but have it, when their, quote, economy is, quote, reopened, what happens when they drive to another state or they get on a flight to another state? What happens then? As we've seen, it takes literally one person carrying this to infect, literally hundreds of thousands of people. So if the economy is reopened in a state that is technically classified as not hard hit by coronavirus, and you have, right now the numbers say 25 to 30% of people are asymptomatic and carrying it, if their economy is reopened, they sit down at a restaurant or a barber shop or a beauty salon, whatever, they get other people infected, and those other people, what happens when they go to another state? And you reopen travel and things like this. So these people make it seem like it's a state by state issue and just close down the worst states and, put the older people, keep them home and let the rest of us go back to normal life. But it doesn't work that way, because it's very easy, if you don't kill the entire virus, it's very easy for people in lesser hit states to transmit it elsewhere. That's why from the beginning, even though we had people criticizing me and saying, Jordan, civil liberties, blah, 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 we should have had a national lockdown. We should have had a uniform, not different states doing different things, lockdown. Cuomo, who the media has put on a pedestal, should have locked down New York. Nobody come out of your apartments, homes, for at least 2 to 3 weeks. It would have sucked, but that's how you kill the virus. And that's what other countries did. So these people who, frankly, are batshit, think that this is the seasonal flu. I could tell you something. I have had this. It probably is still in my system because I'm still coughing a little bit. I've never had the flu, but I've also never had a cold like this. And my case was mild, considering I wasn't hospitalized. But Sweden has 10 million people. We have 330 million. And if you watch, and somebody saved this video, they're going to reopen these economies, you are going to see a surge of cases, which means for your stupidity, whoever tweeted that at me, and for the stupidity of these people in Michigan storming the Capitol, and the stupidity of people here where I live gathering together in Central Park without masks and basically laying on blankets next to each other, because of your stupidity, we're all going to suffer. And we're going to be back to where we began, which is in our apartments, in our homes. The economic fallout is going to be even worse than it is now, because as Americans, we're fucking impatient. And by the way, to tell you the truth, I'm suffering from this. I'm not dying, but I told my girlfriend this morning, I feel like I'm in a funk. I'm not as driven as I was when I was traveling and could come and go freely. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this way. I'm not hardcore depressed, but I do feel in a little rut. I'm in the apartment more than I normally would be. We live in a 1-bedroom, so there's not a backyard and, things like that. Yeah, we could walk, but overall, we're in our apartments 80% of the time. It gets restraining and it wears on you mentally. But that's better than going to the hospital and dying. My mom messaged me this morning, do you and your girlfriend want to come to the house on Long Island? And I said, I would love to, because it's bigger. I could be with my dog. We could walk around the neighborhood. It's less people. Even walking in New York City, you're passing people constantly. Be around my parents. It's bigger than a 1-bedroom, but I said not until I get retested and my girlfriend gets tested, so I know I don't still have this. I'm not going near my parents, who are both over 60. Same thing with my girlfriend's parents. She wants to see her parents. It's been 2 months now. We're not telling you anything you don't know. You guys are probably dealing with the same stuff we're dealing with, the physical and mental. But we need to repeat this in the fall, or if the spike happens sooner, because a bunch of, culture warrior Fox News watchers are feeling triggered because they can't roam around as they choose. Well, frankly, I'm not a strict constitutionalist. I've never been. I think the Constitution was written in 1776 by a bunch of privileged white dudes, and things change, times change. Some things need to be set in concrete stone, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion. But I think there's extenuating circumstances like a pandemic. Your right to go out and protest and speak shouldn't kill me. Because think about all the people right now that are out there probably infecting other people. And a lot of these people that are infecting people at the Michigan Capitol or in Central Park right now don't even know they have it because they're asymptomatic. But the people they're infecting are then going around people that are being responsible. But even people that are being responsible take walks, go to the supermarket, and you could be infected by somebody who's being an idiot right now. Anyway, sorry for that rant. Without further ado, I want to get to this interview I did with Carl Russell. He is a council member with Navajo Nation. Straight up, it's not the most beautiful interview. Navajo Nation, like many Native American reservations, have internet connectivity issues. We did this on Zoom. Usually I do my interviews on Skype. Couldn't get it working on Skype because of his lack of internet, so we did it on Zoom. It's a little out of sync, so like when he's speaking, it's out of sync as far as his words don't match like his lip movement, but the audio is what matters. So I just want to make it clear, like there was nothing I could do or he could do because he's coming from a place with tough internet connectivity. But we did our best to make it look good. And Zoom, like, I don't know, there's some weird thing on the bottom, but anyway, the information will get out, and that's what's most important. So for the 500 people watching right now, keep the super chat coming if you can. We really appreciate this, so we can keep doing this independent reporting that very few others are doing. Before I go, I want to also thank you to Anonymous, $50 in the GoFundMe. Cat, $5 in the GoFundMe. So we are now at 98,435. Hey, maybe miracles could happen. Maybe we could get to that $99,000 mark by the time the interview is over. Without further ado, here is my interview with Carl, a council member from Navajo Nation. Hey, it's Jordan. I'm delighted to be joined by Carl Russell Slater. He is a council delegate for the Navajo Nation, and I'll let you describe all the communities you represent. I definitely wanted to have a Navajo leader because coronavirus has been really affecting and unfortunately taking lives on the vast reservation. Can you just tell my audience which communities you represent?
Definitely. Good morning, Jordan, and thank you for shedding a light on the situation on the Navajo Nation. If you have any Navajo followers, Carl Russell Slater Dasha Jine Ki Ani Nishlan Sontane Bashish Chi and Sina Jenny Dasha Chair Sontane Dashanal Mekana Dant Nasha. My name's Carl Russell Slater. I'm Kia Ani, born for the Jewish people, and I am a council delegate, which is one of 24 in the legislative body of the Navajo Nation, which is the governing body of the Navajo Nation Council. I'm the vice chair of the Health, Education, Human Services Committee, and I represent 5 chapters out of 110 on the Navajo Nation. Those 5 chapters are Chija, Rough Rock, Rock Point, Round Rock, Lukachukai, Saley, Wheatfields. And we have confirmed cases in our communities, and we actually had the first confirmed Indian Health Service fatality from COVID-19 was a constituent of mine and resident of one of our communities. So the Navajo Nation is 27,000 square miles or greater than that. And It's about the size of West Virginia. It's a little bit larger than that state. On a per capita basis, we're only behind New York and New Jersey in terms of our infection rate. We have, I believe, 13,427 COVID-19 tests that have been administered. And within that, there's been 2,307 confirmed cases, which from yesterday was an increase of 166 new positive cases. So we have a very high rate of infection right here in Navajo. And sadly, our total fatalities have increased to 73 as of yesterday.
And obviously, making matters more difficult is, I believe, maybe the number is different now, but about 25 to 30% of homes don't have running water.
Yeah, that figure is tough to get a pure, accurate count of at any given snapshot when you're looking at it. Sometimes official reports will say it's as low as 12%, but in general, when we're pulling these numbers, we say about 40% of households don't have running water and electricity. So when it comes to performing the important sanitation procedures that are a part of CDC guidelines and Navajo Nation public health orders, many households, and in my community, I have two chapters that rely a lot on hauling water for domestic water use. And just to give you a little snapshot of how COVID can affect ordinary government operations, people will go and haul domestic water in the back of their trucks from these chapters, from these local units of government. And the chapters had to close down before they could put protocols in place to haul water safely. And that means having appropriate PPEs, sanitizers, gloves, all of that. So we had community members who were without really water for about 2 weeks. And then you add in these public health emergency orders that have closed down the nation for 57 hours over the weekend. I think this is our third one that we're entering, or we're in the middle of, and the nation's on lockdown. So you are not allowed to travel unless you are an essential worker performing your official capacities, or there are certain exemptions for ranchers. So, you know, if you're a rancher and you need to go water your cows, you can do something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's impacting every aspect of life out here, and the circumstances that existed prior to the outbreak of COVID have exacerbated the outbreak in many instances.
And let me ask you, because like in other reservations, Cheyenne River, Standing Rock Sioux, several others I've spoken to, there's obviously a lack of hospitals. And the closest hospitals are sometimes, 100 miles away. What is the picture like between the reservation, which is parts of Utah, New Mexico, Arizona? Are there enough hospitals? Are there enough beds? I believe there's not a huge number of ventilators.
So that was the biggest concern to me as an elected leader after reading, I think it was the Imperial College report that came out back in March. And it helped conceptualize how the overwhelming of the healthcare system actually is maybe the most important concern for us out here on Navajo, and why we might have to take steps that are more drastic than areas that are better resourced. The Navajo Nation has about 12 or 13 hospitals and clinics. Again, that may seem like a lot when you consider a population of 180,000, but then it's spread out over 27,000 square miles. The resources that are available in those facilities are actually quite limited. The Indian Health Service as a whole, I think this past year was funded at a little over $6 billion. So that's for the entire United States to serve all American Indian and Alaska Native peoples. But when you talk to tribes and you do an analysis with medical and public health professionals, as many tribal leaders do in order to advocate for more funding in Congress, the need is closer to $38 billion, if not $50 billion. So the staffing levels are lower. There's chronic issues with having a good number of doctors and nurses, or appropriate number just in general. And so the Navajo Nation, through the Health Command Operations Center and IHS working together, have been recruiting more doctors to come in, either with the coordination of FEMA or relief groups. And those have been deployed to different units that have seen either infections of their staff to replace infected members, or to supplement lower numbers that already existed. Mm-hmm. My 5 communities are primarily served by the Chinle Service Unit of the Indian Health Service. So on Navajo, we have another, I'd say, extenuating circumstance related to COVID. We have tribal organizations that contract with the federal government with the permission of the tribe to perform healthcare services. So that's Tuba City Healthcare Corporation, that's Winslow Indian Healthcare Corporation, that's Sehotso Medical Center. There's also Sage Memorial, which is another private hospital that receives 638 funds. Those are not under the direct administration of IHS. And then, for example, that Chinle Service Unit, the facilities that are in that service unit, which is like a geographical area in central Navajo, they are under the direct administration of IHS. So the nation has to take the lead in coordinating the collection of data, resourcing IHS and non-IHS facilities, and ensuring that there are appropriate amount of ventilators or respiratory unit beds or ICU beds. That service unit is at level 5 of its surge plan. It entered that this past week. I think that they're going to start closing down outpatient services and focusing purely on COVID and like emergency services. So they've reached the top end of their capacity essentially in order to take care of COVID and, pardon me, take care of their ordinary responsibilities. In terms of ventilators, I think we're up to 51. It's something that was a request right from the outset. It's very difficult to get consistent information when you have all of these different entities that you need to manage as a nation. And there are certain areas in Indian country where you have compacted and contracted all of the services with IHS into either like a master contract or pooled all the funding together. And it's something that we were looking at as a nation in doing before this all broke out, but there's no commitment there. It's just something that highlights when you have a fully integrated healthcare system, it's probably easier to manage a pandemic, but hindsight is 2020, because there's a lot of positive benefits from individual organizations taking on the delivery of healthcare that are run by tribal citizens with the partnership of the tribe. So,
right, and you're also dealing with the basically Navajo members have kind of more vulnerabilities than a lot of other people would have, chronic health issues like diabetes, heart disease, obesity, that the people on the reservation already have, particularly elderly people. So it makes your community even more vulnerable to such a deadly disease.
Yes. The Navajo Nation population as a whole has many more underlying conditions that make them more vulnerable to the coronavirus. So that's increased rates of diabetes. And we actually haven't seen a decrease in Navajo. I think in the past couple of years, I think we saw an increase of 1% in the diabetes rate. I think it was from 17 to 18, which was the last available data. The concern is that if if you have a sick population or a population that has a lot of underlying conditions, you add in then a lot of elders who are our traditional knowledge keepers, the backbones of our communities, and like the pillars of our families and our clans, that you have a recipe for disaster in terms of perpetuating traditional knowledge and not fragmenting our family units. A lot of Navajo families live in multi-generational homes. So when it comes to adhering to public health orders saying that, you know, if you say you were potentially exposed to someone, but you don't know if you are going to be symptomatic in the next few days or not, so it's important to go and self-quarantine. Many households don't have the ability for family members who may need to quarantine to actually do that. So one of the initiatives from the nation has been developing these like level 1 care sites or alternative care sites. And one of them is being set up in Chinle and hopefully will be operational, I think, in this next week. One just opened up in Shiprock, and I think there's one open in the Gallup area now. But the idea behind the site is that, say you have 50 beds, you're able to isolate people from their families, their multi-generational homes, put them in this unit where it's people who are, you know, lightly symptomatic or asymptomatic but have tested positive. They can receive that lower level of care and then hopefully resolve themselves and return back to their homes without increasing the spread. And it, you know, a part of that is material reasons. The nation has a very low good housing stock. It's a consistent issue, you know, depending on the figures. The Navajo Nation, you know, unemployment rate is 40 to over 50%. We are, I'd say, I don't like to think of us as like poor in the big picture with all of the concerns you should have in your life, but financially, fiscally, you know, we're a poor people, and having lots of rooms and homes and running water and all of these things, many of our households don't have them, and it just exacerbates the issue. But what makes us rich is our culture, our tradition, our language, and that's held by our elders. And we need to do everything that we can in our power to protect them. So on this past Thursday, we have a committee of the whole that meets in the council. We met telephonically, and I posed the question, at what point do we need to prioritize our elders or our hatathlis or our medicine people, their presence in these alternative care site facilities, or segregating them from their homes to potentially mitigate their exposure and death? Because that's been my primary concern from the outset, is preservation of life and protecting our traditional knowledge, language, cultures, traditions.
And the federal government broader earmarked $8 billion to go to tribes. Reporting recently is virtually nothing of that $8 billion have gone to tribes as part of the multiple bailout packages. Can you kind of talk about, outside of healthcare, what kind of relief have you gotten from the Trump administration, if any?
So there was $8 billion that was set aside for tribal governments, and it became unnecessarily a sticky and thorny issue for no reason other than someone, or I don't know what to say, but I mean, I publicly asked on, it was either on Twitter or Facebook after it broke, that Tara Sweeney should resign. And she's the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, who was supporting the inclusion of Alaska Native corporations into the definition of tribal government for the purposes of distributing that $8 billion. Mm-hmm. Now, Alaska Native corporations are not tribal governments. They have an entirely separate history. There are, I think, over 220 Alaska Native villages that are federally recognized tribes and are listed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs of the Department of Interior and the Federal Register as being a federally recognized Indian tribe or Alaska Native village or pueblo or rancheria. So they, in many cases, are multi-billion-dollar corporations. They're all for-profit, and they do not provide other services to Alaska Native peoples or Indian peoples in the lower 48 like a tribal government does. And they don't have like a democratically elected council or a council based off of traditional precepts that govern them. So when you include these multi-billion-dollar corporations, there is the potential for them to take over half of that $8 billion that's set aside for Indian country. As I mentioned, there's 574, I believe, at this time, federally recognized tribes. These tribes have the obligations, just like any other sovereign, to provide for their people, whether it's healthcare, education, public safety, and based off of the political relationship with the United States actually has a strong interest in supporting those functions being delivered by these tribal governments. So just as states, counties received relief, tribal governments are obligated, I'd say, before them to receive relief based off of treaty obligations in addition to, the U.S. Constitution. But that $8 billion has not been distributed yet because a group of tribes, including the Navajo Nation, sued the U.S. Treasury saying that that was not the intent of Congress. And when you go in and you talk to our legislators, the people who put together this provision, there was no intention to include Alaska Native corporations. But Tara Sweeney is a former lobbyist for, I think it's Arctic Slope Regional Development Corporation. And I don't have their figures in front of me. I don't want to misquote them, but I mean, they are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and that has, I think, double-digit billion-dollar revenue every year. That said, I think it's a slap in the face to the tribal governments when you include for-profit entities in that distribution formula.
Well, I'm sure those for-profit entities donate to politicians that are making these decisions as well.
They have a very healthy presence in DC to advocate on behalf of their interests.
Yep.
Yes. So, the Navajo Nation, because of the importance of the relationship with the federal government in providing resources to the tribe and policy that affects Indian country and the Navajo Nation, has an office in Washington, D.C., and they've been working tirelessly to educate members of Congress and put pressure on Treasury to distribute the funds solely to Indian country, solely to tribal governments. So I guess just as a point of fact, the Navajo Nation fiscal year starts in the beginning of October, and we passed a budget this past year that was a little over $1 billion. But of that, there was only $167 or $170 million general funds, like discretionary budget. So the rest are made up. The rest of that funding, that over $1 billion, is external grants, primarily from the federal government. So we have a very limited, very, very limited amount of money to distribute and pay for services and needs or capital projects with funding that is just completely indigenous to the nation, collected through tax revenues or other mechanisms, royalties. When it's only a little over a tenth, right? Or maybe 20% of our overall budget. So this funding was incredibly important to supplement the decline in revenue that we've seen and will surely see, and to ensure that those essential services that I mentioned earlier, like water hauling, trash disposal, things that need to happen at the chapter level or in the community level, because there isn't a trash route. There isn't running water to your home. You have to go to the chapter to get rid of your trash if you're lucky, or you have to go to someone else's chapter, or you're like a lot of people and you just burn it. These essential services require funding in order to continue on, and that's paying for PPEs, that's paying for sanitation, that's all of that. It's also keeping people employed so that they can continue to telework. There is limited internet data connectivity on the Navajo Nation, but we're looking to expand hotspots for students. Nick College and Navajo Technical University are the two primary, or they're the two institutions of higher learning on the Navajo Nation that are chartered through the Navajo Nation. And they are looking at using the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum and working with some companies to build out some infrastructure for their students to come to a local hotspot. So if you don't have internet at home, maybe you drive to the chapter, you drive to a library or something like that, and then you're able to use the internet to continue your classwork. There's just a myriad of issues, and we need a lot more material support in order to confront this crisis and move forward.
And that was my last question, because obviously there's the healthcare crisis, but you also have, Navajo Nation is not like many cities where you could order from Instacart or, Uber Eats or something like that and get food to you. There's not as many supermarkets, and there's internet connections, connectivity issues that would interfere with Zoom learning. My nephew is doing his classes through Zoom. So what are the obstacles that are being faced now as far as food, education, and just the normal necessities of life that people would need if they're stuck at home?
So I'm going to kind of take it from just like you said, from the public health orders. The president and the Emergency Management Commission and the Health Command Operations Center have issued a series of public health orders over the past 2 months to mitigate exposure, prevent spread. And that includes a stay-home order that we're currently under right now. You really are only supposed to go out during the week, so Monday through Friday from 5 a.m. Monday to 8 p.m. on Friday for essential goods and services. You're not supposed to be congregating in public or meeting up with your families. Even though we live in a very rural area, we're an incredibly social people. We define so much of our life based off of our relations with one another or with the natural world. And reaffirming those connections, either through spiritual activities or spiritual activities with our family members or our friends or our clan relatives, are incredibly vital to our, some people might say religion, our culture, our tradition, and finding meaning and value in our communities. When that is cut off for the sake of health, when in general, the logic is that these things build toward health, build toward community, build toward the good in life, I think it adds a psychological dimension that is unique, say, from city life, where, a lot of people live in an apartment, they interact with the folks at their work, they have a small social net of friends and or workers or a family, whatever, and they're able to continue that. But if you live, say, in Round Rock, Arizona, where I am right now, you have a few different grocery store options. The closest one, though, unfortunately, is not the greatest. There is a grocery store about a half an hour away in Chinle, Arizona. And I'm lucky because I live right off the road. If you live farther off the road, like most people do, I'm talking about the paved highway, then you could have a 30-minute or hour-long drive before you even get to a paved road.
Wow.
Now, to go get groceries from there, that is a hotspot on the Navajo Nation. So you're going in to potentially expose yourself. At that grocery store, they're scanning people with the little temperature guns, and they're turning people away who have fevers. So that by itself is a little bit of a traumatizing experience. But it's a very small grocery store. It's very limited. And that company spoke to our president, I think in March, the CEO, and said that they were all out of bottled water and they might not get any until the summer. He buys all this bottled water in the winter and he uses it and just saves it and redistributes it over the summer period. So when that small limited grocery store is out of essential supplies, then you have to travel to the border towns. And that's Farmington and Cortez, I'd say primarily for where I live, or Gallup, New Mexico. So Cortez in southwestern Colorado, Farmington's in northwestern New Mexico. Those are both 2 hours away. So that's 2 hours to go get groceries, maybe try to find some water, look around for some sanitation, look around for gloves or masks, and then get home before it's curfew, because otherwise you're going to be paying a $300 ticket at least for breaking curfew. If you work during the week or you have to take care of your kids, it's incredibly difficult for you to obtain essential supplies and food and comply with the curfews. The weekend is not an option anymore for people to do that. They can't go out because of the lockdown that's now been put in place. So it's incredibly cumbersome to carry out some of the, let's say the food and the essential the essential supply runs that you need to do with the current public health order restrictions. They are important, but I think there's probably a better way to fashion it with, keeping a certain number of people out of stores, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I want to mention that there's one town, a border town called Gallup, New Mexico, that actually just received permission requested from the governor of the state of New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham, to have a shutdown this weekend. Now, Navajos go to Gallup quite often, and there's a very tortured history there. And I think people who are familiar with border towns in Indian country know this story. It's not something that's unique to the Navajo Nation, but basically these towns profit off of Navajo commerce due to the lack of stores that are on the nation. And the way that this whole shutdown rolled out for Gallup was incredibly concerning. If you're a Gallup resident, there's a lot of Navajos live in Gallup, and that needs to be said. I think it's a town of about 25,000, maybe a little bit less, and a little under half, I think, are Navajo. But it's surrounded by the Navajo Nation. It was built off the Navajo Nation's money and the Navajo people's money. And the message that seemed to be sent was, keep those infected Navajos out of our town. They're going to compromise us. They're going to hurt us. And they are less than and unworthy of being here. And I'm incredibly hurt by the way it was rolled out. I used to live in Gallup, New Mexico when I worked for the Navajo Division of Transportation as the airport's manager. Commuted there every week and onto the nation and to work. And having been a former resident, I know how much Navajo people have enriched non-Navajos in that town. And it was the outgoing mayor, the new mayor, who petitioned for this. So they're using the Riot Control Act to perform this lockdown, and they're blocking off and barricading the roads with coordination of state police and local police. We're increasing and militarizing interactions between police and our people at a time when we need to be expanding our compassion and empathy and over-explaining the importance of these public health orders. So that's a new development, and it shows you that no matter what town you go to, you're only as good as your dollar. And if your dollar's too infected in their mind, too dirty, then they don't want you. And they'll wait until it's on their terms to have you back in. So, I'm hurt right now. I'm very disappointed in the state and the city for the way they rolled it out. They didn't announce it until very late on Friday. So people, like I said, in my area, they travel 2 hours to get down to Gallup to go get their feed, to go get all sorts of things for essential supplies, farming, ranching. Maybe they need some new paneling or they want to buy some hay. They head down there. Say they got there and it was right at whenever the curfew was, they had to turn around or they had to go to Grants or Farmington or Cortez. They're still going out in public. They're still going to go do that.
Right.
But now they're spending way more money on gas. So I just wanted to bring that up. Sorry, Jordan, at the end, because it's something that I think is going to occur in other towns, and the way that it was done, the law that's used in New Mexico is so concerning. We have a huge issue with our unsheltered relatives who live in Gallup, or I shouldn't say, sorry, they live or they pass through. A lot of them have dependency issues, and they have family that they travel between on the reservation and then spending time in Gallup. So there's a huge outbreak at NCI, which is kind of like a sobering center in Gallup. And they had, I think, 70 confirmed cases out of 150 or 170 that had been tested or something, as of a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know exactly where that is now. When you say the Riot Control Act, it gives you the ability to clear the streets, right? The big thing is about order control of public areas. So there is a history of police brutality in that town. There is a history of people being taken advantage of in that town in an inebriated state. And my fear is that this will empower our neighbor in this town with the aid of the state police to do some truly awful things to our unsheltered relatives or other Navajos, feeling that they are empowered by the governor to perform this duty, and they need to do whatever. But that's what hurts me, because you take a vulnerable population on our streets, a targeted population on our neighbors' streets, and you give the tools of the state to harass them and potentially hurt them really badly with no plan for how you're going to take care of them. When that outbreak took place, they had to get rooms at Motel 6 and these other motel facilities in order to segregate them. And the response was super delayed. So that's just another issue with our people in our nation, where we have large populations outside of our land base, or even though that is traditional Navajo Diné territory, but there are other sovereigns who can act upon them. And to me, what's most tragic is that this was done with the full, I would say it was the coordination and confirmation and approval of the Navajo Nation President's Office. So when the information was provided to the legislative branch, we immediately put out a press release and called the governor to bring up some of the issues that I just spoke about. But it wasn't rolled out right.
Right. And my last question is, how could people help? I mean, it sounds like you could use volunteer nurses, obviously food, I would say maybe even mental health practitioners. How could people help? The tribe, which really is, like you said, as big as full American states, with far less resources than those states.
So there's a few different ways to contribute to the cause. I think that something that's been incredibly inspiring during this time is how local community leaders and, say, Navajo Nation community leaders, so non-government officials, maybe they're former government officials or they're not acting in their official capacity, have stepped up to provide mutual aid. And they've been coordinating all sorts of different things, whether it's seamstresses sewing masks and distributing them, whether it's, for example, the former Attorney General of the Navajo Nation started a relief effort and has been able to raise a tremendous amount of money. And then there's just the local folks who are going to buy potatoes and flour and oil in bulk, and they're distributing it to elders. The way that people can help is manifold. If you have N95 masks, PPE, gowns, my local hospital here, we're out of gowns. So they're using hazmat suits. I don't know how long that's going to last and when they're just going to go to trash bags. So that Chinle Hospital facility that I was telling you about, that's a half an hour away where most of my constituents are served, that's the level of healthcare and resources that they're at right now. So if you can send gowns to Chinle Hospital, I implore you to do so. I'm happy to email you just the contact information for contributions if you want to put that in like your notes or something. I don't know how you can distribute that. So there's that. And then we've started, my family is kind of funny. We're unique. I'm Navajo on my mom's side of the family, and I'm Jewish on my dad's side of the family. And I grew up between the Res and Maryland, right outside Washington, D.C. So working with a nonprofit at our synagogue, or just the synagogue's nonprofit, we've created a fund for people to contribute directly to my chapters. So those are a lot of folks who know me or have a personal connection to this area and this community. And I can send you the link for donating to that. That is primarily to provide supplementary resources to existing operations. So I was telling you about how like our community health representatives or like these public health nurses, maybe the chapter people, grazing officials, folks like that whose jobs are essential and they have to continue doing their work. They need PPEs. And so we've been providing them with PPEs. And then when it comes to preventing the spread and protecting our traditional knowledge healers or elders, we need adult diapers. We need things for elder care. Households, these multi-generational households, we're working on provisioning them with food, with support from that attorney general who had done the fundraising. And that's provisioning food for 2 weeks for a household and customizing those boxes for each household. So say you're a single 0 income household and you have 3 kids, you need diapers, you need baby formula, all of these things. So food, essential supplies for elders and young children, those are needed. PPEs, gowns for the hospitals. And if you don't have those things directly, financial support is great because it allows flexibility for local community organizers or institutions to purchase those items for our frontline workers and our elders.
Great. I definitely want to keep in touch with you because unfortunately, as I'm sure you're used to, the national media doesn't cover the outrage of, communities and indigenous people. I was at Standing Rock off and on for 6 months, and I've covered other indigenous communities. So I think it's very important to keep the spotlight on the unique struggles and vulnerability that our indigenous population has in the face of this deadly pandemic. So thank you, Carl Rosal Slater, a Navajo Nation Council delegate. And yeah, we'll definitely get those links up under the video.
Cool. Thanks, Jordan.
Okay, great. Have a great day.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.
Status Coup.
That was Carl Rosal Slater, a council delegate with Navajo Nation. Appreciate him taking the time. When we post the video, I'll put the links that he gave me on how you can help. Let me give you his email, which he told me to do. Hold on. You could email him directly if you want to help. But yeah, I think Navajo Nation and other indigenous tribes definitely need more coverage because they are being affected greatly by the coronavirus, and they are some of the most vulnerable communities in the country because of the pre-existing issues like diabetes, heart disease, and other problems. Thank you, Progressive Geek, $5 in the super chat. What else did I miss? Don't think I saw any others. And let me update you. We are at $98,480 in the GoFundMe, so $520 away from $99,000 raised. I got 99 problems, but a billionaire ain't one. I saw somebody say that in the live chat, so I stole it. Thank you, Anamaxa, $5. Thank you, Anonymous, $25. Thank you, Kelly Elaine, $5. Laura, $10. So, before I go, I want to answer, because there's a couple people who, it's not that I think their intentions are wrong, but I think are fundamentally uninformed on how the coronavirus works. And as such, are telling me, Jordan, you know, you're proposing fascism and authoritarianism and blah, 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 when you say there shouldn't be these protests outside and all that. First of all, I think what people don't get that are saying that, your constitutional right to speak and protest is not greater than my or somebody else's right to live. So if you've calculated, I'm willing to take the health risk to go out and protest because I want the economy opened, that's great. But that risk you're willing to take is not necessarily the risk someone else is willing to take. So why is it, because somebody said, well, what's it to you if they're protesting at the Michigan Capitol, just don't go to the protest. You quarantine and you won't get it. That's not how a deadly virus works. It's not just the people out protesting that are risking themselves, okay? So I'm not going to put you on blast, but there was one or two in particular in the chat saying this. So let's say 100 people show up at the Michigan Capitol, okay? Because they don't like the stay-at-home orders, they want to get back to work, all these things. Do they have the constitutional right to do that? Yes. But in pandemic times, I do think there's some gray areas. So if those 100 people go, I didn't see them wearing masks. And by the way, a mask is not a foolproof plan. I was wearing a mask when I went outside and I got coronavirus. Unless you're wearing an N95 mask, it's not foolproof. I was also wearing gloves. So if those 100 people go to the Michigan Capitol and I live in Michigan and I don't go and I'm staying home, well, I might be staying home, but I still have to go out to the supermarket. Sure, I might be going to the supermarket. I definitely am going to the supermarket wearing gloves, wearing a mask, but all those people, because they have to go out and protest right now because of the tyranny of a stay-at-home order for your health, they are infecting each other. A lot of them might be asymptomatic, not even know they're carrying the disease. So then when you're infecting each other, one of you who just got infected, I might pass you on my way to the supermarket. I might pass you in the supermarket. I might pass you somewhere. That is how it spreads, because it doesn't matter if I am not at the protest with you. It matters that more people are congregating to get infected. And then those people that the increase in infections through this congregation together at the Michigan Capitol, and I'm just using that as one example, then they are infecting me who did not go out, and me who, even though I'm trying to be safe and wear gloves and masks, there are more people carrying it and therefore risking people like me who didn't go there. So if you don't understand that, you're uninformed. If you don't get that, and that's how a virus works, then you're stupid. Sorry. Same principle. My girlfriend and I were walking yesterday in Central Park. Both have masks on. stayed away from people, and we're looking around, and there's people without masks sitting on blankets together like normal times, definitely not 6 feet apart. They might be doing it because they don't feel any symptoms. Again, 25 to 30% of the people with coronavirus are asymptomatic. So those people are risking broader infections because they're sitting together on top of each other, just like the folks at the Michigan Capitol. And then those new infections that are coming because there's more people sitting with each other because it's nice outside and they're not wearing masks, I'm then at greater risk when I'm passing those people on my walk outside, or my walk to the supermarket, or my walk to Duane Reade. Because even if you're quarantining, you do have to go out for certain things. You could be wearing a mask, you could be wearing gloves, but the point is, when you have these mass congregations, you're increasing the amount of people carrying the virus to then infect other people. So I'm sorry if it triggers your civil libertarian leanings, but I frankly don't give a damn about your upset that you're locked up in a house. The economic pain is real. I get it. But I think what you don't get, because when people are in economic pain, they just need short-term relief. But when you reopen the economy, whatever that term means, an economy only works if you have customers. You're not going to have a ton of customers now because people are losing their jobs. People are having their hours cut back. People that do have jobs are tightening their belt. If you do this too quickly, and Trump doesn't care because he just wants to win re-election. He don't care about saving lives. But if you do this too quickly, the very thing you're kicking and screaming about right now, being locked up, it's going to happen again, only longer, probably in the fall. So for you to go out and kick and scream in the Michigan Capitol right now, or wherever people are kicking and screaming, you're actually making it worse for yourself. And by the way, just to be clear, for these civil libertarians, don't tread on me, going to the Michigan Capitol, infecting each other, not wearing masks, standing on top of each other, not social distancing. How many of those people are driving to other states? How many of those people are flying somewhere? So it's not just that you could potentially infect people in your state, but when you're crossing state lines, it's not a state-by-state issue. And by the way, there are limits on free speech. I know you guys don't like, these corona truthers and civil libertarians. There are limits on free speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? So why would the principle be different if we're in a deadly pandemic? So you should be able to violate what doctors, medical experts, infectious disease experts are saying, that the virus can only be contained through us distancing from each other. You should be able to say, fuck that. Well, no, you shouldn't if it could potentially kill me or my mother or my father. Because if we're being responsible, but you're not, we could still die even though we're being responsible. And by the way, this is the same principle for why, and some of you probably agree with this, for why I don't believe your Second Amendment right to carry bazooka guns wherever you want is more of a right than a child's right to live. Your right to carry an AR-15 or whatever absurdity is not greater than a child's right to live in a school, or anybody's right to go to a movie without getting shot up, or a mall without getting shot up, or a concert without getting shot up. And frankly, the people who think this way, they're not constitutionalists. They're not people who sit there and beat off to the Constitution. You're just selfish idiots. We don't live in the Hunger, well, we do live economically in the Hunger Games, which leads to death. Now, if there was a way for people to go out with signs, protesting, wearing N95 masks, and being 6 feet apart, I wouldn't have such a big problem with that. But unfortunately, we all can't get N95 masks. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work out that way, that people are 6 feet apart. And by the way, we don't even know if it's really 6 feet. The numbers have been all over the place. There's a reason they call this the novel coronavirus, because we don't know everything about it. So cry me a fucking river that you think I'm an authoritarian and a fascist for basically saying a bunch of idiots who are unhappy at home having to be around their wives this long, because that's part of it. You know, their constitutional right to go congregate during a deadly pandemic is more important than my right to live. It's not. And frankly, at a certain point, I wish there was some brave politicians that spoke this way. If I ever ran for office, I would. I don't think what was written centuries ago in every case is what we should follow. The Constitution was written for colonies and 4 million people. They had muskets at that time. So I don't want to hear your bullshit that, oh, somebody wrote to damn with the Constitution. I don't particularly care about the Constitution when my nephew's life is on the line, or my niece, or my girlfriend, or my mother or father. The Constitution says so. By the way, I don't remember the Constitution said you have a constitutional right to congregate during a deadly pandemic that literally just had the highest, as these people are congregating, he had the highest death count since this started in America. Any connection? And by the way, remember this. As all these congregations, and it's hard, it's a beautiful sunny day here in New York City. I get why people want to get together. I miss my friends, my family. I'd love to get together. But this is not forever. But it's going to be made longer because of people's stupidity. And there's no excuse for that. And to the people messaging me, look at Sweden, look at this. You're fucking stupid. I'm sorry to be so harsh, but Sweden has 10 million people. We have 330 million people. So you can't reference Sweden. It's just absurd. And you want to know what says a lot about this country? When a deadly pandemic could be turned into a culture war. This is not a culture war. This is a life or death battle. There are people 8 blocks away from where I am right now. I hear the ambulances all the time in emergency rooms fighting for their lives. Same thing by a lot of you. So if you think that makes me anti-democratic, whatever, okay. Sorry. I don't think your right to congregate during a deadly pandemic where most of you aren't wearing masks, and then when you infect other people that are being careful and do care about living, no, you don't have that right. And by the way, you're in such a rush to get back to work. I get it. A lot of people are economically hurting. The Republican Party has sold you out. The Democratic Party isn't doing enough. But guess what? You need customers. What we all should be doing, Republicans and Democrats, is rent striking, is mortgage striking, is utility striking, not paying our co-pays deductible. To hell with all of them. The only way you're going to get change is if you hit them in the wallet. But I got news for you restaurant owners, for you barbershop owners, salons, these places that are reopening, gyms. You're not going to have the customer base you need to even meet your overhead right now. So that's my rant. Let me go to any super chats that I missed. James Doan, $5. Michael Moore completely dodged the question about your Flint story on Michael Brooks' show last week. Redirected topic to his effing movie. What is up with him? Oh, James, don't get me while I'm going on Michael Moore. Thank you for the $5. All I got to say about Michael Moore, I wish I was wrong, but it seems to me that Michael Moore cares more about his shitty documentary, which is basically a bunch of right-wing talking points from 10 years ago that did a lot of damage to the climate movement because it attacks the very people that have pushed the movement forward, like Bill McKibben, with right-wing talking points. I watched 20 minutes of it. I turned it off because it's not factual. He's using right-wing talking points. But putting that aside, I mean, listen, Michael Moore getting one documentary wrong isn't the end of the world. He's done a lot of great things too. But the fact that Jen and I had to literally beg for him to even do the bare minimum of tweet out our Flint story, which he did not do. I think the most he did was mention it for 5 seconds on his podcast. And then when he was asked directly about it, I think he was on with Michael Brooks and Anna Kasparian. I saw that interview. When he was asked directly about it, he pivoted to his documentary. So that tells me Michael Moore doesn't exactly like elevating things unless he's involved with it. And that's a shame, because Jen and I broke one of the biggest environmental cover-ups of this century. And part of why it has been suppressed and not elevated and not covered is because people with a much bigger microphone than us, like Michael Moore, chose to be silent about it. And that's a shame. Let's see. Karen Webster, $5. God bless you, Jordan, for bringing that message. God bless you. Steady Drummer, $2.99. Thank you. Progressive Geek, $5. Sam Wise, J. Morgenstern, $2. Like nobody read about how the Spanish flu spread. Yep. Progressive Geek, $10. Swirly Swirl, $10. I live next to a university. Many seniors and their extended families are coming back for seniors photos. They were congregating outside my house. Crickets from the university. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Lorna, $20. I appreciate the independent news where I look for the truth. Thank you. Suffragim, $10. Have you ever heard anything about Betsy DeVos and anything she might be trying to do behind the scenes in regard to our public education, since the pandemic has our children learning remotely? Thanks. I think Betsy DeVos is a pandemic on her own. I'm sure they're using this pandemic. We haven't looked into it, but I'm pretty sure they're using this pandemic to push their charter schools and for-profit education and all that stuff. Because there's never been a disaster that people like Betsy DeVos hadn't tried to take advantage of. So, no, I haven't looked into it, but we can. And I will say, it would not surprise me if they're trying to leverage this Zoom learning and, what we're forced to be doing right now, which is digital learning, and trying to turn a profit. So that's a good question. Jen, let's definitely look into that. Andrew Dwyer, where did you get the flag? $1.99. Jen I think she's already reached out to the company. If you haven't, we will. We got the flag. Where do we get it? Adbusters?
Adbusters. I'll drop the link.
We'll drop the link in there. However, Adbusters, if you're watching, our charity soon ends. We need a little kickback here. I know you're getting a lot of sales because of the flag behind me. We are a business. We got to make some money here. So maybe we can make a partnership, Adbusters, so that you get more sales and we get a little percentage. By the way, I'd like to make Status Coup shirts with that flag. And Jen, if you're watching, we definitely need to trademark the United Corporations of America before, Now This News or one of these faux-aggressive outlets steal it from us. Let me make sure I don't miss any others. Robert Copeland, I'm going to $5. I'm going to switch to the Green Party, as most politicians who are Democrats sold out the American people and are puppets to the big corporations. I can't say I blame you. Exulas, $5. America needs a strong third-party option. Please help the Green Party reach 5%. So I think I'm reading ones I already read. We finished today, with 98,480. So if there is a patriotic American in this audience that wants to throw, $520 pesos at us to get us to 99,000, we would be indebted to you forever. If not, we get it, because it's hard to do a GoFundMe while people are themselves struggling. We are doing the GoFundMe because, our ability to serve our product, and our product would be journalism, is severely limited right now. We can't travel. I'm going to be particularly careful about when I travel again because I have coronavirus. I'm going to try and get retested this week to see if I'm still positive for it, because the doctor actually told me you can still shed the virus for up to 30 days. So we can't travel right now, and really there's nothing to cover. Honestly, I'm not personally interested in going to the state capitol to cover idiots putting all of our lives in jeopardy. I'm just not going to do that. Sorry, not interested. I appreciate other media that is, but I'm not going to cover that. So we want to make a deal with you, the ad busters. So hopefully we can do that. If not, I don't know. Might have to threaten to take down the flag if we can't get a piece here. Lunasphere, Dow 99, thoughts on overpopulation discussed in MM's doc. Tell you the truth, I only watched 20 minutes of his doc.
You watched it that way?
I only watched 20 minutes. And so I didn't get to the part about overpopulation. I think overpopulation is valid, but in terms of the climate crisis, overpopulation doesn't even come close to our meat consumption and fossil fuels. So, yeah, I'd have to watch the whole thing to see what their argument about overpopulation is. But, I mean, fossil fuels, meat consumption, animal agriculture, to me, you put a dent in those three things, a major dent, population would not be the issue that I'd be looking at. And you know what? I also think, and I think that Josh Fox brought this up in an interview he did. And again, this is not like specifically to attack Michael Moore, but if people put out something that's not factual, we can't then give it credence to say, well, now there's a debate. Because Michael Moore and the filmmakers behind this basically want to put forward, well, now there's a debate between whether renewable energy, wind and solar, is actually having a positive effect. No, there's not a debate. It is having a positive effect. It could be having a much more positive effect if our government would immediately start discontinuing the fossil fuel industry. It wouldn't happen overnight, but if they start taking measures now, drastic measures, to end the fossil fuel extraction, that would go a long way, and then we even further kickstart wind and solar, you'd have a major, major difference. So just because Michael Moore and some filmmakers put out right-wing talking points from 10 years ago that are faulty doesn't mean there's now a debate about renewable. There's not a debate. A lot of their talking points were putting out that solar isn't cost efficient was from 10 years ago. The cost of solar panels, wind and solar, has gone down dramatically in 10 years. So I think Michael Moore on this one got it wrong. I think he got really, really bad facts and advice. Maybe he's just trying to be controversial. I don't get it, but he's wrong. He's wrong. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Be back tomorrow. Definitely spread the channel. Tell your friends, your family to subscribe. We've kind of been stuck because YouTube is not really putting our videos or live streams in people's feeds. We don't show up on recommended much, so you could kind of be our ambassadors, so to speak. So definitely spread the word. Tell people to subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow, 4:30 Eastern Time. Peace.